Roll call.
Ms. Mucko,
Here.
Mr. Olson,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mr. Clock, Mr. Erkins.
Here.
All right. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? All right. Seeing none, move on to the approval of minutes. And first, we need to approve the minutes from February 22nd because we couldn't approve them at the last meeting because we didn't have a quorum. So we'll take care of February 22nd first.
I'm sure I move we approve the minutes from February 22nd. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Then we approve the work session and regular minutes from the non-meeting meeting on March 24th because we did not have a quorum.
Madam Chair, I move we approve March 24th minutes. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on to the monthly activity and financial report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. In a different location for me, a little tougher to read this way. We had a very successful Butte and Boise St. Patrick's Day party on St. Patrick's Day. It was a great time. We don't do a lot of self-promoted events. We had about 350 people in attendance, and everybody who attended had a really, really good time. So it was fun to do. We just changed this, and I'm sorry I didn't get it changed prior to this meeting, but the May board meeting was moved from the 17th now to the 16th. So sorry for the lack of change on this one, but again, it's the 16th, not the 17th in May. Right now, Q3 could be a record with full July. Q4 has a few available dates remaining. I think I mentioned before that October right now has 3 dark days, 2 Sundays, and Halloween. So the third and fourth quarters are really booking tight. We were excited to have the Big Sky tournament here in March. It was very successful. It was fun to see fans. The championship game was packed on Saturday night, and you know, I visited with a lot of people who were here just as they were wandering around the plaza and whatnot, and people just really love coming to Boise. Big Sky, Dan Satter, who's the assistant commissioner or the deputy commissioner, he and I have gotten to be friends and had a chance to meet with him on a couple of things while he was here, and they really can't be happier. They just see this growing tremendously year after year. So we're excited about that. At the time, Cody Lund and Kay Dillon were both nominated for the Rose Awards. More to come on that in a couple of slides. The groundbreaking ceremony was held for the aquatics facility. Well, that was in April. Certainly of note for this particular meeting. So just a couple of weeks ago, went very well. I'm sure Ryan and Nick probably will touch on that a little bit more during their presentation. And again, even though it was a week and a half ago, it was a great chamber leadership conference up in Sun Valley. It was the highest attendance they'd ever had. And the district was well represented, as Jody had sent an email out about that too. Cody and Anne Marie and myself from staff, and then Jody and Jim and Chase were all in attendance as well. So I thought there were some great topics, and I don't know if Jim or Jody or Chase want to elaborate at all, or.
Well, Sun Valley could take a lesson on serving a large dinner from the center. Other than that, I thought it was well done, and
Yeah.
I was proud of our team, including for sure Chase and Jim. Infrastructure.
We had, presented 5-year awards and a 20-year award, and Kristen and the staff presented me with a 20-year award at an all-employee meeting. Joanne Cambrieri Smith, who unfortunately we're going to be seeing her go to a part-time position. She's retiring. Good for her. And Anne Marie has already backfilled that position. Pam Zuha, Carpenter Zuha, 5 years, and we're very fortunate to have her. Taylor Boyd, who is one of our banquet bartenders and banquet captains. Great to have him on board. Ken Kozlov at 15 years. He's I think I walk fast with long legs. I don't think anybody is on staff. Even Lochner has a tough time keeping up with Ken. So he moves at light speed. He's one of our banquet, one of our operations supervisors. So again, good group of people. We had logistics awards, Tyler Kelly on the left, and then Chris Olson and Josh Castro, and then Spencer Stroud, who's not pictured in this. Chris is one of our culinary, and Josh is one of our operations supervisors. But Spencer's dad is my well, in fact, he's a couple of positions above my title, but he's the head of the Oregon Convention Center. Craig Stroud, he's a great guy. And Spencer is his son. He's a senior. He's going to graduate in a couple of weeks from ESU. Go on with PepsiCo as a financial, one of their finance guys. So exciting to have team members like this that are doing so well. This was a Butte and Boise party. Thought I'd just highlight a couple of photos of this. Some highlights of the Butte food. It's pasties and pork chop sandwiches are the two biggies. So we had some fun festivities. We created a speakeasy concept, which in Butte, that was, back in Prohibition, there were several speakeasies. And so we recreated an actual, one from some photos that we had from Butte. So that was a lot of fun. It was very popular. And really, this is the biggest one. Cody Lund, Manager of the Year for the Rose Awards. Very proud of him. And that was just last week. Earlier this week. And it was held here. And the culinary team just outperformed everybody we taught. In fact, I'm still getting emails about how great the food was, the service, but we really shined. It was an opportunity for us to help thank our industry partners. I mean, we really, we went over the top, and the team just did outstanding. And it was really to help us thank our industry partners as well for what they do for us. So we really wanted to put on a good show for them, and I thought it was exceptional. So on to the actual business at hand. Our March visitors actually were positive, and if you look, particularly at Montana, the visitors and the high Idaho number, that was due to Big Sky tournament. As y'all know, Montana has two teams in that, so lots of visitors. Washington and Oregon, even though it was only 7 each, again, we had the Big Sky has teams in both of those states as well. So, and folks from Mexico. The financial goals, as we talk, and as Anne Marie will further highlight, are looking very positive. We have 10 million in, again, I mentioned this every month, but we have 10 million in additional capital needs, predominantly for moving the ceiling work in the ballroom up, as well as in 2025, as well as some of the other further capital needs that we're having in East and West both to maintain the asset. We're working now on a strategic plan that I'll be talking more to the board about in June. Just initial highlight, and then I'd like the board to approve. At the time, we'll talk more about it, but my goal is to have a full strategic planning meeting with all the board members late summer, early fall. It's something that we had planned to do before COVID. Obviously, it messed it up, but there's a lot of projects that the board and the district could potentially be involved with over time. And so my team has already gone in. We had a meeting this morning, in fact, and then I just want to share some of that with the board sort of as a baseline. And then you all can determine, again, that sort of sets the stage for a strategic planning meeting, and then hopefully we can come together for a long-range vision after that. Utilization is looking strong. Again, later in the year, there's some shifting between local events and conventions. Conventions obviously take up multiple days normally, which displaces the opportunity to book local business. So again, there's some shifting in how the building is utilized, but overall, I think the rest of the year is really positive, and I think we're gonna, again, right now, knock on wood, I think we'll end very, very strong.
Do you think that some of the local events will continue to book throughout the year? I know your forecast is 158.
Well, again, we're hoping that some of that can shift. We're getting a lot of for the year inquiries. The problem is dates. It's just availability. And as we get later in the year, July is practically full back-to-back conventions. It's going to be the busiest July we've ever had. August is our only quote unquote slow month, which is not a typically great month to have, any event. I mean, some conventions we've got Idaho Association of School Administrators in August. They like to get together before the school year starts. Department of Ed is looking to tag on another meeting with that, one of their newer meetings. So that's great business in August, but again, between vacations ending and school starting, it's kind of a toss up. But again, the rest of the third and fourth quarters, we're just tight.
Of those 62 conventions, are almost all of those booked for the year?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, again, and I just got the STAR report for March, and the total hotel revenue stated in STAR was $18 million. In 2019, which was the highest March revenues in history, were $13 million. There's a $5 million swing, and most of it's in rate, which portends to have a record March room tax revenue. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself before I see the numbers, but if math works. Again, these slides, they're great slides, and all the information on them is necessary for comparative reasons. Anne Marie's done a great job in bolding out the appropriate lines to be looking at. It's busy and it takes a minute to see it, but again, record pace at this point. So. Same here with room demand and revenues. Busy slides, but the information is necessary. As we get into next year, we might start weeding out a little bit of it. But again, with COVID, it skewed everything. But the good news is all of the numbers are up. Coming up this week, we have a FAM tour with Helms Briscoe. Went through the profiles today of the attendees. Really solid group of people coming in. It's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. First of the week, Allie and Carrie have collaborated on this and put this together. There's a customer advisory group that'll be here 2 weeks later. Again, this is a Carrie and Allie collaboration. So we're getting some really good meeting planners in that haven't been here before. They're looking forward to it. Again, I looked at their profiles, really solid. And Helms Briscoe is one of the biggest, most influential meeting planning companies in the country. And so it's great to have them here. They're not too long ago, Boise wouldn't even be on the radar. So it's great to have them here. Which to this slide, I think as we look into 23, 4, 5, I think as we progress through the rest of this year, 23 is going to get to the point where we sell it out. We're not going to be able to take any more. And 24, 25, going out on a big limb here, I think they have the potential to be record years when it's all said and done. Again, just a reflection of the convention grades. Well, I think we're going to continue to see mid-size obviously be the bread and butter for what we do, but I really think into 24 and 25, I think we will see more of the citywides because of the demand that Boise is seeing in the Northwest, having challenges in our neighboring states. A lot of meeting planners are less likely to be booking some of our neighbors and looking more into Idaho and other Mountain West states. So I think we're in a great position.
So this month or last month was a busy month for us. We prepared it was 2 months ago. Director Olson had asked us to work on an RFP for investment services that has been prepared and reviewed by the Finance Committee, which is Director Olson and Chair Mucko. So we're getting ready to get that issued. I'm also a member of a group called Meeting of the Minds, which is a group of government finance people, Nampa, CUNA, Garden City, Boise, and CCDC. And we had the state come out and visit with us at the last meeting, and the state's putting out a transparency initiative, which is being ran by the Controller's Office, where all state entities or quasi-state entities are going to be required to report financial information to the state. I believe it's by 2020. So they've started with the big cities, and then they'll eventually get down to the special districts, which are we are considered one of the special districts. So as part of that process, we've also taken a look at a budget software. We're currently have gone through the initial stage of reviewing it. They've done a presentation to the management team, and we've made the commitment to acquire it. It's a cloud-based software, and it's called Questica. And the city of Boise uses it. I believe Nampa uses it. Meridian uses it, but it will help us move towards getting ready to be able to upload the information to the state website at that point when they tell us they are ready for our information. The audit was completed prior to the last board meeting. We do have our auditors here, so thank you for coming. They will be presenting the audit for your approval at the completion of this report. And then, as Pat had indicated, Joanne Cambrera Smith is retiring. Joanne's been with us for 5 years. Her and I have just a wonderful working relationship. So we've hired Nikki Keith. She's coming from a manufacturing company in Nampa. She's going to have some big shoes to fill, but she is excited to start. She's starting on Monday. So overall, from our combined revenues, we're $1 million positive variance to budget. That comes most of it from the Boise Center. Then the district has a positive variance of $326,000, and the aquatics, the revenue in the aquatics is collecting our monthly rent payment, and we don't have a lot of expenses in the aquatics at this point. You can see here in our lodging tax revenues, they were $644,000 in March, which was a record for March. So going back to what Pat was talking about, is the next month looking like a great month too. We'll just continue the trend. We've had record tax revenues in 9 of the last 10 months. And so if you do a 12-month rolling average, our tax revenues would be $9 million based on a 12-month rolling average, or not a roll average, but rolling back to now. So if that continues, we probably will see that again this year. The operating trend for Boise Center, our monthly revenues were $613,000. We're below budget by about $150,000. However, it's still a top 3 month for February, only behind 2018 and 2019. Month to date, our revenues fell below budget by 20% for the month. We had $48,000 in lost revenue from events that were canceled earlier due to COVID. We continue to have record revenues for AV. We talk about this from time to time, but we've made substantial investments in AV and throughout the COVID, and it's certainly helping carry the revenues at this point. Food revenue contributes about 46% of our revenue. So when our revenue is usually below budget, it's directly related to the food revenues, since they have such a heavy lift. And this month we had a lower attendance for banquets than we had anticipated, and banquets tend to have the higher food cost per attendee, so that affects the banquet revenue. Our direct labor was 62% compared to budget of 53%. In higher revenues tends to help with that percentage. So when we're under budget, that percentage goes up. We also are having a heavier reliance on temporary services right now due to the inability to staff, and we're using more overtime. We also had 3 trade shows, which tend to take more labor to set up the floor. And then we've also are using more temporary services for custodial. Our food cost as a percentage of food revenue continues to be above budget. That is really, when you go through the financials, it's due to the higher protein costs. Everybody is, doing the best they can to control it. Unfortunately, as costs continue to go up, it makes it a little bit difficult to keep up, because we set our menu prices and then based on an assumption of what food pricing costs are going to be. We continue to make adjustments as needed, but it's, again, if we're playing catch up in some cases with menu prices.
One of the things that we have already addressed are room rental prices and meal menu costs. Those, we won't see impacts on those probably until next month or June, because again, as Anne Marie indicated, contracts were signed with menu prices locked in. As contracts were signed in October, November, December for early this year, those were locked in. And we've seen tremendous price increases, as I think everybody sees in restaurants and even grocery stores. So again, the price increases on the menus are starting to be seen and impact for the remainder of the year. So we should start seeing some correction in the percentages.
And then our repairs and maintenance for the month were also above budget. We had some air wall repairs, and then we also, the view glass that's over in Boise Center East has had some defects in it. The company is replacing the glass, but we're covering the cost of the labor. So the glass replacements under warranty, labor costs are not. And so that has been part of the cost of our threshold. Are part of the reason why we're over budget for the month. Year to date, our revenues are of 2.1 million, or only slightly below budget of 150,000, which is good news. Last year at this time, we had 152,000 in revenues. So obviously a significant difference from 2021, which we're all very grateful for. Our labor expense is down from prior year. Last year in 2021, we had a one-time benefit hit that we took. So we don't have that this year. Contract marketing is up 24,000 compared to prior years. We continue to try to keep the buildings and the events going. Our building expense again is related to the repairs and the maintenance. It's up due to a change in the capitalization threshold from 1,000 to 5,000. Last month, our professional fees were higher than budget. They're back in line year to date for this month. And then our loss of 2.3 million is less than the prior year by 677,000. Again, higher revenues result in a higher gross profit, which results in a lower loss.
Madam Chair, Anne Marie, should I feel good or not? I'm confused. I saw a slide. We have $1 million positive variance on the revenue expense line. And then the next slide, I see food costs are up, labor costs are up. Insurance, repairs and maintenance. So how can we, on the one hand, have all these increasing costs and on the other hand, have above budgeted profit?
Sales, general and administrative expenses are running below budget by quite a bit. So that compensates for, right, if your gross profit's off or lower than budget, you've got to compensate for it somewhere. So we reduce the costs as close as we can below in the sales, general and administrative. So at the end of the day, it turns out to be a positive variance or, a positive trend.
Yeah.
It's just managing our costs the best we can.
Thank you.
Our utilization, you can see March, the solid black line is actual or forecast for this year. And you can see that our utilization is up in that optimal target range. As Pat indicates, when we start getting up into that optimal target range, it makes it really difficult for us to find places to have events, because usually those are a Sunday or maybe a weekend or a 4th of July type holiday where people don't want to schedule, or it might be a single day in the middle of a week type, which is where the optimal target range comes from. So we're going along pretty good throughout the rest of the year, and we'll continue to pick up local events as we move throughout the year as normal. But in 2023 is filling in. Right now, it's running at about 86% of 2019, and we're normally don't see that high of a level this early going into a whole nother year. So everything is looking good from that perspective. Wrong way.
Madam Chair, we might also mention that as we've indicated from last year and even early on coming into this year about whether or not Festival of Trees and St. Al's and then St. Luke's Kid for a Night in June, whether or not the health systems we're going to continue moving forward with events. While not definite at this point for sure, Kid for a Night, St. Luke's is continuing to plan for that event, which is the first couple of days in June. And St. Al's notified us they do want to start talking about the potential of having a Festival of Trees. So no guarantees at this point, but at least the healthcare systems are certainly considering conversations at this point to hold some sorts of events. So, and particularly with festival being such an iconic event for the community, it's good that there's at least some dialogue going on, and hopefully that will come to fruition. But so we're excited that at the opportunity, hopefully, of being able to have festival back this year. We're crossing our fingers, and certainly I'm not in any way implying that St. Al's has committed to anything. They absolutely have not. But at least we're having some conversation.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'd move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Monthly and activity financial report is approved. Anne Marie, do you want to take the audit?
Thank you. So we have our auditors here. We have, is I Bailey. We have Lee Miller and Abby Beltoff. They worked with us this year. They are new to our organization. We had them do an internal control review in August, which gave them and us a great step ahead of the audit. The audit went absolutely amazing. We allowed them to have full access to our financial accounting system, our payroll system, and our accounts payable system. So a lot of their work was able to be conducted remotely. It was, went off without a hitch, which is hard to accomplish regardless of how many years you've been doing it, much less for it being our first year. So I just want to express our appreciation to the audit committee and to the auditors for all your help. It's was a pleasure and to work with you, and it's looking forward to working in the future. So anyway, I'll turn it over to you to present the audit.
All right, thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, appreciate this opportunity to be able to spend a few minutes with you today and just kind of briefly go over the audit process and kind of hit some of the highlights of that process. I'm the partner in charge of the overall audit. Abby is the manager who's taking care of the day-to-day activities and everything. I'd like to echo, first of all, what Anne Marie mentions about the fact that how well it went, especially for the first year audit. Usually there's always some hiccups and things like that, but I think considering the fact that we're able, as part of the process of doing your internal control review, helps us really gain an understanding of what's going on here and everything. But as well as for Anne Marie and her group for having everything ready. And when we started the audit the first week of January, and we were ready to issue and finalize the report before the middle of March. So, you know, for it might seem like a long time for you, but we've got clients that are going 6 or 7 months before we even get to that close of issuing the report after we start the audit. So it says a lot about the group. They had all the information ready for us. We're able just to jump right in and start our audit straight away. While she did mention we had access, we couldn't do anything to the records, but we had access and everything that we can look at the information, and which creates even a more efficient audit because we can go and look at it instead of asking them, and they can have to try to pull it and provide it for us. So all those things together created a very good first year audit, as well as smooth as it went, and to have it ready by the middle of March. And the only reason we didn't have the board meeting in March, and that's the reason we're just here an extra month later. As part of the process, we went through in more detail with the financial statements with the audit committee and went over the numbers. They had a lot of questions and just clarifications and everything. So we appreciate that review, and as well as the questions they had. So it's always good to see when you have a good, strong audit committee, which helps the board in knowing that you've got your key people from a financial perspective and the experience and expertise taking a look at it and be able to present to the board. You know, the financial statements that were part of your board packet, we, as part of the audit process, we were asked to compile the numbers from the financial statement perspective. So your balance sheet and your income statement, you had your cash flow statement as well as the footnote. So we compiled all that information from the trial balance to general ledger, as well as information provided by Anne Marie. The management discussions and analysis is the section that was all done by Anne Marie and her group, putting together of showing the comparison, providing the explanations. From my perspective, that is probably the best part of the financial statements because it gives management an opportunity to be able to explain the changes, what occurred, why did they occur, and by having management doing that, then they know and understand what's going on with operations and are able to put that in a written form. And so that's a really good way for people to take a look at and have a good understanding from a financial perspective of the operations and how well things are going, or depending on the year, how bad it could be going, or whatever the case may be. But that, again, that was all Anne Marie. Our part in the financial statements was the auditor's opinion, and that's the first first report that's part of the financial statements that our opinion in regarding to the financial statements was a clean opinion, or also what we refer to as an unmodified opinion. that there wasn't any issues that came up, there wasn't any disagreements where we had to modify our opinion, because our opinion basically states is that the financial statements that are being presented are materially correct, based on the audit procedures and things that we do. And so a clean opinion. So again, that's another good indicator of the strength of the accounting group. The strength of management is the tone at the top that sets it for the rest of the organization, as well as how well does the financial statements look and how well does the audit go. You know, just real briefly on the audit process, we don't take a look at every transaction. There's not enough time, nor do you have enough money to pay us to look at everything. But we'll look at what we deem to be maybe some higher risk areas, cash, investments, revenue recognition, and we perform steps. We don't look at everything. We'll sample transactions and everything. And so based on all of our procedures, we're able to get comfortable that the financial numbers that are being presented are going to be materially correct. So just to recap on that, auditor's opinion was a clean opinion, and that there weren't any issues that we needed to present. The other report that's in there, which is towards the back, is a report that we give on your internal controls and your compliance to laws and regulations regarding to the district. And we're happy to report that there wasn't any items that we needed to report in that auditor's report. So for instance, if there was a breakdown of your internal controls, for example, if cash bank reconciliations weren't being completed, that is a breakdown in your internal controls, and we would be required under the auditing standards to point that out in that last auditor's report. And so we're just happy to report that based on the internal control review we had done during the year, but also the procedures and things we did during the audit, that nothing came to our attention that there was a breakdown of controls, or that there was areas that we felt like there should be significant improvements or anything along those lines. Now, we did provide some suggestions during an internal control review of just some things to tweak here and there. There's always room for improvements. The thing about internal controls is that once you get them in place, you just can't say, okay, we're done. It's one of those constant things that need to be tweaked, taken a look at. Change in personnel, change in policies or procedures and those things. So just kudos to the whole group for the efforts in making sure that those controls not only are there, but they're working, and that people are trying to follow those controls. We didn't have any journal entries as a result of our procedures. In other words, the information you're basically seeing in this audited financial statements is the same information you've been seeing throughout the year. Of course, there would be some year-end entries that they proposed, but we as auditors did not identify any issues where there needed to be any adjustments. So overall, it's a good audit report, and especially so for first year. And so I guess at this point, we'll just open up for any questions regarding, like I said, I didn't go into very much detail on the financial statements, but anything about the process or anything at this time.
Questions, Jody?
Well, Madam Chair, if I might, as Chair of the Audit and Finance Committee, we had a number of meetings with the committee. I met with Abby in her office before they started, and we met a number of times subsequent, most notably the last one where we reviewed the draft. Now that Joanne is leaving, I'm not sure how we're going to continue this in the future, but I was very impressed, particularly with the difference between a local firm, which we had been using, and a national firm with a local office. Big difference, I thought. And they just have procedures and staff that aren't available to small local firms. So from my standpoint, that was very comfortable. And that transition is somewhat understated, but particularly Abby and her team on site. So I'm honored to move approval of the audit report.
Okay, thanks, Jody.
I'd second that.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Right. Audit approved. Thank you so much. I appreciate your effort. guys are up next.
How many accountants in this room today?
Like, wasn't it just tax day?
Chairwoman, it's good to be back. Thanks for having us. Our intent here today was just trying to give you guys a few updates. We wanted to walk through a lease issue, and we're gonna ask Mike for some help on that, just to make sure I don't bumble through anything. But first of all, thanks for those who attended the groundbreaking ceremony last week. It was really well received. We got some really positive press out of it. Actually, we actually get the Statesman again today as well, so just a little blurb about kind of the projects of the valley, but they chose our project and our pictures to put on the front page, so that was kind of nice to see. But obviously, Channel 7 KTVB did a great job with their stories. Got some great press at Idaho Press Tribune. A lot of phone calls between then and now, which has been great. So it was a real boost. And it wasn't a fake groundbreaking. I mean, we continue to get your reports from CM Company and Monday's the day where they're actually starting Monday. So ground's gonna be moved. They're gonna start, digging holes for the foundations. The sprung structure will actually show up on May 15th. It's slated to begin being built on May 31st. And should take between 60 and 70 days for that to fully go up. The process is pretty interesting as they go through that. Essentially, roughly, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but once they get about 2/3 of the way through it, they start from the middle and they build out. Then about 2/3 of the way, once they get through that, then they're gonna allow essentially our pool installers in. They'll start digging the hole and pouring more concrete and slabs, everything to go forward. So I did bring, I know some of you have probably seen our building fly over or fly through, but I brought it, see if you guys want to kind of see how the building has come together and what it's gonna look like inside. It's about 30 seconds long. Those doors on that side would be on your right-hand side, is the north facing side of the building. So that's the side that will essentially open up to the open space. So, I mean, very much kind of what we've sketched out from the beginning. We've really tried to stay true to what our intent was, and that was to build a really straightforward facility. It is a massive building. If you drive by the lot out there, they have taken time to put some orange stakes where the corners of the building are. And it's going to be a big structure. It's 315 feet long by 120 feet wide. So it's a big structure. Obviously houses 2 pools, seating for over 1,000. The locker room facilities are very straightforward. As part of our process that we went through at the city and permitting, there were some definite changes we had to make and go through, and all which I think will be positive long-term, including a lot of additional restroom space for spectators and things like that for events. But all in all, it's been kind of exciting to get to this point. It's been a challenge to get to this point, but here we are. I know I've shared with Pat and a few others just kind of some of our slides on how it lays out, and I brought a couple. I don't know if you can pull up a couple of those. There's one that's I'll at least show you our site plan and then the floor plan, just so you guys kind of see what things are going to look like as this thing starts to go up. So this is the site plan here. Federal Way would be to the north. Finley there to the east. You'll see the building sits as far south on the property as we could put it, with parking down there in the south as well. Our property line essentially goes all the way up to where Flying J ends and you see trucks parked. And the property will be improved all the way up into that property line. All that space on the north essentially is designed right now to be open and available space, which will be, will be used at, for swim meets, things like that now, but it's also designed so that if there's future expansion, whether it be, hey, maybe we need to put an outdoor pool, or maybe we need to add concessions, or whatever we decide to add, there's a lot of space to the north. That space will, the larger pool that you saw in that kind of that fly through will more than fit. The second pool was more than fit in the space up above there in the north. So we've tried to make sure that however we design the property, everything would allow for any sort of future growth or development that we wanted down the road. I'll have you throw up the floor plan if you would. And these slides get a little hectic just because they've got everything that you could think of from the architects on here, but hopefully you'll be able to kind of see what's being presented. Okay, so this slide is the, if you mind scrolling down just a little bit. There you go. This is the facility portion. So this is where you'll see the locker rooms are on the left. The center core of that is all equipment. So that's all the filtration equipment that'll go to both of the swimming pools, including a surge tank. So the surge tank will go down actually about 15, 18 feet. And that surge tank is designed, imagine you've got this pool that's already full of water. Now let's drop 800 kids into it. What's gonna happen, right? The water's gonna overflow. So the surge tank is designed to let that fill up with water so you don't see water fill up onto the pool deck. So it's all trying to design all these things into a very small little footprint. Architects have done a pretty good job. Then on the right-hand side of this, you can see is kind of the entryway. You can see the dark block on the top right of that. That's the main entrance into the pool area. It'll be a lobby and office space, and then you'll see additional restroom space there that will be designed for spectator use during a swim meet or other event. So we tried to be very efficient with the space we had, and they've managed to squeeze it all in and get the approval through design review and all the city processes. So we're pretty pleased with how it turned out. And not surprisingly, as like everything else in the valley, costs have more than exceeded what we expected. Certainly that was when we did our feasibility study with CSL, that was the one caution they had was, hey, everything looks great, but expect this to cost more than what you've slated. And sure enough, we're there. We're 30% higher than expected, and that's kind of what we're seeing, I guess, in the valley, and that's the feedback we've gotten from other projects, that they're kind of seeing the same increase in overall costs. So in order to try to keep everything moving forward, we've reached out to different whether it be banks or lending institutes to see if they're willing to do some form of lending for us. We've had success. We're in discussions with a couple, essentially doing fully non-recourse debt in order to allow us to continue to move forward with the project. Essentially giving us construction funds to get us through to opening, while we continue to get naming rights and capital. Those things come in will help offset that general principle. And I know that's one of the agenda items here. We've had some discussions with a few in this room, including Mike, about what we need to do from our lease standpoint, how that fits, obviously to protect everybody, but mostly to protect the auditorium district and your interest in the land and the property and everything else. And I don't want to step over my feet on this one, so I'm going to hand off to Mike to let him kind of describe what we've asked and how that kind of fits into this to make sure that everything's done the right way and to further protect the district's position of the project.
Right, so Madam Chair, I mean, there's not effectively a lot to report. As Brian mentions, they have been talking to some financial institutions. The sort of complicating factor is our lease structure is set up, as you may recall, so that effectively the auditorium district essentially owns more or less everything, other than maybe some of the personal property. But both the land and all the improvements they're on are in fact owned by the auditorium district, regardless of whether ICA is providing the money for that or we are. And so that makes it a little baffling for the lenders to figure out exactly then what they are doing if ICA is borrowing money, and what might their security be and whatnot. So I guess I would say the financial institutions are trying to figure that out. And, again, we've got a long-term lease and certainly if they were comfortable with essentially stepping into IC's shoes, that wouldn't really matter to the outer term district, you know, there would still be a facility operated in the same manner, but in any event, I think banks are kind of creatures of habit and looking at things that are different is challenging for them. And so they're trying to wrap their minds around that. And if they come back with sort of any further asks or tweaks to the lease or anything else in order to get the financing in place, then, we'll have to talk to the board about that. But I guess I would say it's, they haven't figured out enough as to what they need to ask that there's anything we can, talk to you all about in any detail.
Okay, so nothing at this time, but just heads up.
Yeah, I think that's all I can add.
Yeah, no, I think, and just to be clear, we've been very clear with everyone we've talked to that this, it has to be non-recourse. It can't change the position of the district in any shape or form. And in fact, we view it as almost a positive if we can get them to essentially collateralize the lease, because it essentially puts them back into our shoes. If for some reason this thing doesn't work, they step into the shoes and the district continues to be protected because you guys have the lease in the land. So that's been our objective, no matter who we speak with, is just to make sure that everyone remains in the same kind of shoes they are now without harming the relationship and project we have on partnership.
When are those lease payments supposed to begin?
So we've been paying lease payments on the land since we closed. So since October, we've been paying 5% on the land purchase price. The lease payments on the remaining capital towards the improvements begin once we open the doors. So as soon as the facility is open, then we pay rent on the remaining portion of that.
So you guys haven't made an ask yet, but there might be something in terms of those lease payments to assist or in order for you to get that other borrowing, the other loan or whatever.
I think the ask, if there is one, is if the lease requires an amendment to allow it to be collateralized or to allow someone to step into our shoes, that will be the ask. But it's certainly not our intent to ask for any forbearance or forgiveness of any lease payments. That's still fully intend to do that as we have been since October.
And I guess I would say, Madam Chair, Troxel does a whole bunch of financings for other governmental entities which utilize lease structures, not annual appropriation lease structures, but sort of long-term lease structures. And, and we've done, like 50 or 100 of them for various hospitals around the state and some other entities, most of which are financed by local community banks or some of the bigger banks. But so it's not, something that is totally unique, but it always takes some explanation. And so I think that's kind of the process.
So we'll just wait to hear on that.
Yes, things progress, that we'll reach out to Mike or whomever needs to be the point person on that.
But you're going to continue on moving forward with construction.
Correct. Yeah, we still feel pretty confident where we're at. The way that everything's sketched out, it appears that we're not going to have any problems to move forward one way or another. Nick and I actually have a meeting with CM coming tomorrow to kind of go through what have been the final bids for this initial first phase. And I think we'll get a better idea of what those initial cash flow requirements are over the course of the next few months.
Well, I guess I should say, Madam Chair, I did sort of offer up yours and Jody's time if needed to. When I talked to one of the bankers, I said, gee, if you need to talk to somebody other than a lawyer, I said, I'm sure Pat or you as the chair or Jody as the sort of expert in all things ICA and helping with lease and stuff would feel comfortable talking to them. So hopefully I didn't overstep my bounds there.
Madam Chair, I had the same thought when Ryan was talking about that. Jim and Kristen and myself and the other directors have a overview, I would say. We're supportive and we're pleased with the basic cost sharing and what's fair and willing to move forward within our authority. Because if we're gonna change that, that's a lot more work. Unless Jim wakes up one morning, and changes his view. So I'm happy, speaking for me, I'm happy to get any information about amendments or what sooner rather than later.
And just curious about the press, any questions that you received after the groundbreaking, positive, negative, sponsors, all of the above?
It's really been positive. You know, we're just in the process of trying to continue to set up meetings with potential donors and, you know, naming rights sponsors. And we've got a few, you know, positive response for those and a few meetings scheduled over the course of the next couple of weeks. So that's great. And I think, you know, press only serves to help us. I mean, it's really been a positive for us on the press side. Haven't really heard any negative comments or data concerns or anything like that. I think what we've really tried to impress upon people is that it's, you know, that groundbreaking is a double-edged sword sometimes, right? It's, hey, we're breaking ground, so a lot of the community thinks that we're set and ready to go. But the other side of this is, no, we're still looking for capital and helping people in the community will step up. And we try to be, you know, try to stress that during that ceremony and certainly stress it in the interviews that I gave to meeting members. So we'll continue to beat the streets on that stuff and been working pretty hard on that, certainly over the last couple of years. So.
Are you looking at fall or early winter?
Well, if you're asking us, fall. If you're asking CM, early winter.
Okay.
We think it'll be, you know, the range we kind of have is December to February, but certainly February is kind of the last possible date we expect to be open by February at the latest.
And the first big event occurs when?
First big event will be July of 2023, followed by another one in August of 2023. So, and we obviously would love to have a few events before that, just to make sure we get all the kinks worked out.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, legislative update, yeah.
I'm gonna bring up something a lot less exciting what you just talked about. I'm gonna touch a little bit, I'll touch a little bit on what happened in the legislative session this year, and then I'll go into a little bit of primaries and what we saw post-session and what's happening as we speak. This year, the session was fairly ordinary. Unlike last session where they went all the way into November before they could adjourn, you know, and all the discourse between the governor and the legislature. That all seemed to be gone this year. I mean, what we saw this year in this legislature is they came, they did the business, and they went home. And I think they're very satisfied with the governor's budget. It was progressive, very manageable. Most legislators thought, well, that's good. Let's go ahead and move the governor's budget forward this year, which they have done in years past. Last few years, the legislature's really driven away from the governor, if you will. I think it's partly due to a faction of the Republican caucus that we haven't quite figured out what they want done, but whatever it is the governor does, they don't like. We had a $1.9 billion surplus. They started with a record surplus. We had the largest tax cut in history, went from 6.53 to 6 point. Governor offered a 12% rebate on all state taxes. There was an education increase of 12%, $300 million. He fully funded the career ladder, which is stair stepping of teacher salaries to get them up to market rates. And they funded the school district, something very unique this year. They took, how much in insurance?
It was $4,500 per teacher.
Yeah. So they took $4,500 per teacher and added it and took out of the general fund and funded the school district's ability to join the state health insurance plan, which is going to be huge. And that is a great benefit to these teachers that are in these disparate programs, and some of these districts paying a lot for their health care. They get in the state plan and save a lot of money. They gave the teachers a $1,000 bonus and a 3% CEC increase. They allowed $50 million in water infrastructure. 25 million of that's going to go to fund down in Mountain Home. The Air Force Base is running out of water essentially. And they're going from the Snake to the Air Force Base. That $50 million is probably gonna be used up, but they're talking about even next year going back and maybe funding more of that water infrastructure project money based upon, the drought year and what will they start hearing from the cities on what they need as far as infrastructure, renovating a lot of the city systems. There were a number of tax bills banded around the legislature this year. Not one of them ever could come to, they couldn't build enough coalition and the House Rev and Tax Committee to get any of them passed. Jim Rice had a bill over the House side that dealt with property tax and a number of other things. Mike Moyle had a bill that dealt with some property tax and some other types of tax issues, but they just nothing could ever pull this into enough to get things out of committee. So again, they punted the tax bill to next year. And it also, in election years, they like to talk about tax bills, but very seldom they get done. One of the things I think we saw this year is this legislature didn't get bogged down. The House and Senate leadership held very tightly to transmission dates. In other words, you have to get a House bill to the Senate by a certain date, vice versa. You have to have a bill drafted in committee and introduced by a certain date. And they held very firm to that this year. They haven't done that in years past. They used to do it all the time. But it really brings an element of discipline to the legislature. And very helpful, I think, is just to get kind of the stair-step movement of getting the stuff through the body down for the signature. They all agreed to a late March adjournment in January, and they met it. So, I mean, I think by and large, what I've noticed in my, 30 years of doing this was more like a legislative session of years past, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. We had members of the far right, the Freedom Foundation members, candid. They kept trying to go to the floor every day of the House, trying to get unanimous consent to bring bills out of. The Speaker allowed them to all introduce their bills, but he had them all introduce it to a committee that he controls. And so they introduced mandate bills, and they introduced grocery tax bills, and they introduced gun bills, and they introduced abortion bills. And he just set them over there and wouldn't hear them. It's like, you can introduce it, but I'm not gonna move on that bill. So every day, Ron Nate or one of them would get up and try to move the body, which you can by unanimous consent, a vote, to pull those bills out of committee. And almost every day he'd get up and rail on, tax bill or a grocery tax bill or an abortion bill. And they'd vote. And the first vote was about 48-22. And the last day of the session, he called up another bill, tried to do it again. And the last day of the session, his vote was 61-9. So he actually he lost votes as they went through the session. I say that's because it's very interesting. I really you saw kind of a delineation of that faction of the party starting to lose a lot of their support as we went on in the session, because one, people saw that through redistricting, they had new districts and they wanted to go home. And two is people just got tired of them kind of raising Cain and not trying to move anything progressive and positive towards, the policy of the state. The redistricting totally upset the apple cart for this election cycle. What we're going to see is, at minimum, we're going to see a 30-member movement in the House. That's 30 of 58 Republicans. We think it's going to be that much of a movement. That's our analysis. And in the Senate, we're going to see 14 of 28 members of the Republican caucus. That's not counting what may happen on the D side of each. So we could very well see a 35-member movement, half and half of each side. I think that's unprecedented in Idaho history. I think you go back and look, I don't think anything like that ever. So what comes from that? We're going to see a heavy movement to the urban areas. Chairman of the committees, if you go back and look historically, have always been rural members of the body. We're going to see less and less of that. We're going to see more of urban, which we call urban members now, the Boise, Canyon County, Kootenai County, Bonneville County, Twin Falls County to some varying degree, but you're going to see the gravitation of that. So we're gonna see more, I think, more urban issues coming before the legislature. We're trying to all kind of figure out how this is all gonna play. The Boise or the Idaho business community's really gotten behind a group of 20, 25 new members. These are people that seem pretty progressive. They're Republican, they're conservative, but they want to come. We've been through an interview process and they want to come to the legislature and do what's right for the system. And I think they're going to ground challenge a lot of these Freedom Foundation folks. And you've seen the Idaho business communities really lean that way towards them. And it's going to be a real test to see how far, how deep that Freedom Foundation commitment will be in this next session and into the election.
Madam Chair, okay.
Um,
You have, I know it's crystal ball, but Becky's replacement.
What?
It's a crystal ball ask, but Becky's replacement.
The speakers are going, he's going to Lieutenant Governor's office. He's running for Lieutenant Governor. And we talk about that almost every day, Jim. And it's a crapshoot right now because you literally have 25 to 30 members that don't know even the names of the people that are, Mike Moyle. Now you have Mike, here's who's running. Mike Moyle's running, the majority leader, system majority leader. Jason Monks is running, a lady in Eastern Idaho named Wendy Horman is running. She's on Joint Finance Corporations Committee. We hear Brent Crane, chairman of the House State Affairs Committee. He may be running. John Vandewater over in West Boise might be running. There's 5. Sage Dixon from District 1 may be running. That's 6. And then Megan Blanksman, the caucus chairman. And she's out helping all these new members, and she may be actually the odds on at the end of the day with the one with the most votes. Because whoever can get that freshman class can win that. It's an election held on December 2nd. And, they're all going to be working the heck out of these new members between now and, but it's going to be a freshman class that's going to elect the Speaker of the House, which is, I don't know if that's ever happened either. And these are going to be people that know nothing about the system. It's going to be a old-fashioned student body president election. and there is nobody that can tell you what's going to happen. I've asked everybody under the sun and they'll just shrug their shoulders. But it's going to be very interesting. So we're all watching that very closely. We're having up to 2. Well, yesterday we had 3 fundraisers we all went to. Everybody's fundraising. The fundraising numbers this year are exorbitant. West Boise used to run a $30,000, $40,000 campaign. They're $100,000, $120,000 now. The Lieutenant Governor has raised $700,000 for that race. Scott Becky's raised $700,000 for Lieutenant Governor, part-time job. His opponents raised $450,000. The governor's raised $1.6 million. That's the kind of money going into these campaigns now. And these district races are all, these West District, their challenge races, they're all budgeting $120,000 per race. So it's put a lot of, I think it put a lot of leverage on the business community and contributors. A lot of people are getting asked a lot this year for campaign funds. But I think that, again, we're going to have a legislative body next year that's going to be just wild as all get out. Because these people are coming with new ideas and they're really not new ideas. They're ideas that everybody's always had, but they have to bring it back to the legislature for consideration. But again, we're just preparing for next year. We don't know what to expect yet. We'll know more probably after the 17th. We'll know more after November as we move in. See, leadership of the House is going to be a huge part of this. Will there be a challenge in the Senate? We don't know that yet either. There's some discussion about that. I don't think that'll probably happen, but there's some talk about it. The governor's race, the numbers we see, the governor's at a 65 to 70%. I mean, he's around 65%, I think, electability. His opponent, the lieutenant governor, is around 25%. I think he feels pretty safe in that race. Lieutenant governor, I think we see Scott Becky leading in that. He's got a name ID 2-1 over Priscilla Giddings. That's what we've seen in those numbers. He's raised a lot of money. He's up doing a lot with his name ID. And those down ballots, name ID makes a lot of difference. Attorney General's race, one that everybody's watching closely, I think that's a coin toss right now. I've told people if the election were held today, I'd probably be Raul Labrador, but I think the Attorney General's got a month here to go out and work his issues, and I think as you move down closer to election, I think that he has some advantage. We understand that a group called Club for Growth has supported Raul Labrador in years past. Ed for Congress came in and put $600,000 buy-in for media for Labrador yesterday, so that's gonna make a big difference. So it's gonna be very interesting. Again, we haven't seen anything like this I think in all of our careers, and be curious to watch. Any questions? I'll answer them the best I can.
One more question. So, I mean, one of the offices we deal with is Secretary of State for our election. So how do you handicap that race?
Phil McGrain's running, Dorothy Moon from Rupert's running, and Mary Souza from Coeur d'Alene's running. Phil McGrain's run statewide before, a little bit better name ID. He runs from a Boise base. So I would say Phil McGrain has the advantage right now. People say his numbers are running close with Dorothy Moon. But again, this Ada base that he's running, Ada, people knowing from Ada County. And in that primary, again, what we're urging is if people get out and vote, the Phil McGrains are gonna win that election. I think if people stay home, I think it really weighs to the advantage of the Freedom Foundation candidates. But yeah, I think right now, I think Phil McGrain's probably the odds on. And I think he'd make a good Secretary of State.
Any other questions? I mean, we don't know, since we don't know who's even gonna be there, we have no idea what issues will come up.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's what we've talked about, haven't we? And they're all gonna come with, we've tried to evaluate that somewhere. I don't think there's any way to do it. Literally, I just think of that caucus with, half of them new members. Never even sat in a seat before, never been in a committee hearing. We're urging the speaker before he leaves, I think, put together a plan where you can have new chairman to have seminars where the chairman can sit down and run a committee. Madam Chairman. They've never done that before. So it's gonna be very interesting.
And I think the only other thing that I've seen in the news is the suit for the transgender bill, I think, is continuing to move forward. I don't know if there's any news either way on that. But
Yeah, that and they stayed the abortion bill and,
Yeah.
a couple of those things are gonna be
just kind
hanging
of
out there.
lingering, yeah.
What do they decide on that? We're gonna see those come back in different forms, I would imagine.
Just keep our eye on them.
Right.
All right, thank you. Yeah,
Next.
appreciate it. Item number D, under new business, other businesses moved because we have nothing, right? Okay, strike that. So on to executive session.
Madam Chair, pursuant to Article 74-2061C, I move we go into executive session to discuss acquiring interest in real property which is not owned by the public.
Okay, roll call vote.
Ms. Mucko,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Clock, Mr. Erkins,
Yes.
Pam, did you change your name?
I got married.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's Zuha, Zuha, right?
That's pronounced.
Are you
Okay.
recording? Yeah. Answers that.
All right, on to item F, consideration of preliminary diligence to be conducted by the executive director for acquisition of real property not owned by a public agency.
You
Just
direct as the
give-
chair.
Just give Pat authority to continue to research projects as they come before us and crunch the numbers and look at things.
Will do.
Okay, seeing no other business before us today.
I move we adjourn.
Second. We don't have to.
Yeah, the whole.
I guess I could be done.